Good evening, ladies and menfolk. Welcome to episode 81 of Word Ninjas Live. I am your instigator of creative insanity and occasional productivity, Charles. And joining me tonight is Will.
Hello.
And everyone else may just be buried under 12 feet of snow or some such, 'cause winter. I don't like that we're still going to get like 3 to 7 inches tonight, depending on how melodramatic the weather person was. But despite all the bad weather, we're still going to do a show. Because I say so. Presuming the power and internet and Google holds.
And weird little critters crawling around in our vents don't attack us in the night. There's something scurrying around at a heat vent right this very second in my living room.
Who did you pick up this time?
Who did you leave behind?
Nothing. That I'm willing to admit to on recording. Alright, let's roll into talkie points, because we have a few of them. So let's get the ball rolling with the first one. Do you ever write self-aware, culturally relevant, and or societal commentary in your pieces? If so, how and why? You'd think I'd be able to say all of that without fumbling, considering I wrote the darn thing.
Meh. Writing and speaking is two completely different things.
True. And we all know how I like to put the wrong emphasis on the different syllables, as multiple people have commented, enraged. They'll just have to deal with it. I decided to bring this one up because various pieces in the media this week kind of reminded me of how our current generation discusses the importance of representation in the media, from race to gender to sexual identity to religion, all of that stuff, a lot more publicly and globally than we used to, mainly because of the spread of technology. We can do this now. We don't have to rely on just traditional media to discuss such things. That's what social media is for. So I'm curious how other peoples have handled this, or at least thought of this, or were affected by it, and whatnot. I know in my current trilogy in the works, I have all sorts of different types of representations that my characters have picked up that I'm going to have to figure out how to handle, even though some of them I'm not overly familiar with. So that's where research and discussions come into play. And before we open it up entirely, a Justin has appeared, thankfully surviving Mother Nature.
Mic test?
Yep.
No, there's no mic here.
Justin test?
Hey, you're here.
All right, excellent. Let's have more awkward silence while I try to connect. So I got here about 10 minutes ago, and then my internet was like, no, we're good, and then shut off after I turned the laptop on and after I connected to Google Hangouts. And then it turned back on by itself, so I could be in and out, who knows.
Fun.
Wonderful.
Yay, technical difficulties.
Yeah. So in terms of the first talkie point, yes, I would say that most of my horror works deal with culturally relevant and timely happenings. Not that I'm taking advantage of the current fear state, but it certainly helps. And talking about things that have affected me really helped with my writing. So a lot of my horror stuff, culturally relevant, and sometimes politically relevant. There's the novel that I'm writing right now. Opens with a school shooting, so that's obviously difficult to write, but also culturally relevant. Yes. So much care has to be taken when dealing with situations that are real and current, because there's a lot of sensitivity there. And I'm not writing it to be scary. It's sort of a set of scenes that sets off the main character on his quest. Or not his quest, his journey. He doesn't really have a quest, except to deal with his own sanity. So yeah, I use current events as tools for that. When I'm dealing with fantasy, though, not so much, because what's going on in their world is not parallel to our world at all. So I try to keep stuff out of it. And, there's various, religious tropes and things in fantasy that I do use, but I try to be light in the trying to get people riled up category. Unlike in my horror stuff, where I do like to get people riled up.
But hopefully it's a healthy riled and not just a I'm going to piss these people off for the fun of it type of riled.
Yeah, no, this is not fun for me or anyone. My current novel. It's a descent into madness, and it's something that I myself am dealing with, and writing about it is cathartic. And hopefully, other people that read it will recognize that it was written in good taste. It's not like I'm, the camera is right there in the school during the shooting, and then it's panning over at a whole bunch of, dead, shot up kids. That's not what I'm doing. So I think that in and of itself is probably a step in the right direction, not going into that other direction. There's something to be said in horror about not showing things and letting the imagination figure it out for itself. Because what we come up with in our heads is way more screwed up than what I could ever possibly write.
That's sometimes a problem as the writer, though, because even though we may not write down the full details, sometimes we picture them, whether we want to or not.
Luckily, I've already pictured all these details, hence why I'm writing the novel in the first place and trying to get it out of me. So that's helpful. I didn't have to recreate a whole bunch of stuff in my mind with whole cloth.
I have a similar situation with one of my 6 main characters in the trilogy who is bipolar, a chemical addict. I'm not quite sure how best to phrase that one, considering it's nanotechnology-based narcotics. I don't have a convenient term for that yet.
It'd still probably just be an addiction. Or a chemical addiction.
So the whole mental health and addiction aspects of that, I want to be somewhat respectful to it rather than dig too dangerously into it, which has been interesting because both of those aspects I'm not really familiar with. So it's hard to figure out what details are actually relevant and which ones are more stereotyped than not, as it were.
And that's the kind of thing that's extremely difficult to find people that are open to talk to. Not your subject specifically. I'm sure you can find people, but when I'm writing about things that I don't necessarily have familiarity with, the challenge of getting that information, if it's relevant, is very taxing on people. And as much as I would love to talk to somebody firsthand that had these horrible experiences that I'm writing about, recent school shootings or otherwise, I don't know if I want to go walk up to a guy who's been through all that and try to drag it out of him. That seems almost worse than him reading my novel. Is reliving it, and that's not something that I'm necessarily willing to do yet. And I've considered talking to, doctors and police and people theoretically more professional. But then I end up on a list, and that doesn't seem like a great plan.
So, please. Yeah, we're all on a list at this point.
I'm on a few lists, but not that list. Crazed psychopathic killer is not the the list that I'm on right now. Horrible, degenerate, maybe. So yeah, writing about something that you're not familiar with.
Did he cut out? His sound cut out and his face has frozen.
It's that cold.
Goodness. Well, while we wait for him to unfreeze, for our listeners and viewers, by all means, post in the comments in regards to your experiences with this. Like, have you done this?
Too. I have experiences too.
I just figured I'd toss it out there so when the delay catches up, maybe we'll have some commentary. So by all means, take it away.
The only ones with what I've been writing I've ever had to really work with is in relation to stuff like sexual identity and sexuality and that kind of thing. Since I'm writing a lot of sex-based stories, I also include a lot of different... I don't even know what the word is for the culmination of it all, other than just identities and genders, and it's all very confusing these days. Having transgendered characters and intersexed characters and gender fluid characters and bisexual characters and cisgendered and transgendered and
all the genders,
all the sexualities. Trying to figure out what your characters are.
Now that's just in the one scene that you're writing, right?
Yeah. Are they straight? Are they gay?
Together.
Are they bi? Are they poly? Are they demi?
Do they change throughout the story?
Yeah. Maybe they're just bi-curious. Maybe they think they're bi and then they try something and go, nope, never mind. Not interested. And then you have to figure it out without pissing anybody off because you want to be accurate, but then you also have to deal with all of the people who think they know what they're talking about and then they don't.
That's kind of inevitable, unfortunately.
Yes, yeah.
But if you take your due diligence and do your research and try to make it accurate, or at least show that you've made the effort to make it as accurate as feasible, then people will take notice and appreciate it. Yeah, the haters are just going to hate no matter what because that's what they do.
Oh, yeah. I think I get away without having to worry about certain things like race, considering I write in like a furry anthropomorphic verse. So everyone's animal people.
Well, sometimes it can be a fight, depending on how stubborn the characters are.
They can be pretty stubborn sometimes.
Well, you know what character you need to come up with is an animal creature that is otherkin as a human.
Ugh. I have no commentary for otherkins. But only
flip the script.
I don't have any research into what otherkins really is, so I've never done any research into. I'm aware of otherkin, but I've never really researched what that is, so I have no commentary on that.
And digging through the copy pasta versus anything that's actually legitimate is troublesome as well. You know, yeah. There's the copy pasta I like is I sexually identify as an attack helicopter, and then it goes through a big list of, you know. Well, you just look up that sexually identifies an attack helicopter and read that copy pasta because it is hilarious.
There are some people that I think go a little bit overboard with their identities. You know, when your identity is a paragraph long, you might be overthinking it, or maybe you're getting a little too detailed. I know I'm looking forward to. I have a character who is going to be for a future story that I'm excited to write for because she is gender fluid.
Hopefully,
yeah, there's a
time to time
right.
when
There's a
changes happen.
fine. Sorry.
Go.
There's a fine line between figuring out your identity and exploring that part of yourself and being a deranged narcissist.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And you don't want to fall into the other
No.
into the other category.
There's differences between being curious about who you are, being confident about who you are, and then being unnecessarily aggressive about who you are.
The first two are okay. The third one
Let's talk about politics and religion next.
I avoid politics
we'll
and
hit the
religion at all
trifecta of sensitive
costs.
topics. I can't imagine why.
Why don't we tell the government to do that? Maybe we can help them. There, that is our commentary on both. Hey, we're good. Moving on. Does anyone have any closing commentary on this one? On the crew, that is? I wasn't looking at the screen, so if you just shook your head, I didn't see it. But your silence I'll take as a let's move on. Moving on to topic number 2. What outline methods have you used? Which do you prefer? I know a viewer had submitted this at some point in the commentary, and I know Justin has commented on this at some point, so I thought we'd bring this up again. In the show notes, fcwriters.com, for episode 81, we've tossed in a couple links to various outlining methods. Some of them are lists, some of them are specific to certain styles, so by all means go check those out at your leisure. But I thought I'd open this up to the crew. Which outline methods have you used, and do you have a preference? Or do people just make it up as they go along?
Outlining, not my strongest suit.
Do you at least like bullet point stuff every once in a while, or write down a few core ideas? Or is it different from chapter to chapter or work to work?
The way it works for me would probably drive a lot of professionals nuts, but I will play the various scenes out in my head like a movie, tweaking things until I like it, and then I write it down. And that is my rough draft.
So I'm not the only one that does the whole scene in my head thing.
Yeah, I know. It's tricky, though, because it plays out like a movie in my head, and now I have to translate that to words, which slows the scene down because in my head, a little action takes place in a second, and now I got to write a sentence or two to describe that. Which is probably why I'm better at dialogue than whatnot. So I did outline, because I've been a little stuck, I did do a brief outline for the next upcoming chapter. I wrote something down. I guess it's bullet pointed. I basically just broke down each scene and then like 1 or 2 sentences for the basic premise of what I want to happen in that scene. I don't know what kind of outline method that falls under.
It's your outline method.
Yeah. It's the William Granville outline method.
I know for myself, one of the links that I tossed in there was to 4 methods for outlining your book by Do-It-Yourself MFA, which is a great website within its own right, but their 4 methods were like breaking things down by acts, breaking things down by time, by character, or just combining them. I actually do the combination method of breaking things down by acts, so what's the beginning, what's the middle, what's the end parts, are there any in-between points I already know, and then going straight into the characters. I don't really do time well, in writing or in general, so I just skip that one entirely. I know for my trilogy, I've actually had that whole master spreadsheet designed to figure out the main points, but that's now been broken down to here is the act that I want to play with, here are the characters, and then I just pound out dialogue between them and then fill in details after that because the dialogue comes very quickly for me. And it even works kind of as a outline within itself because it shows me what may work as interplay, what may not, and then I'll fill out the actual world around it. Or at least that's what's working for me at the moment. It always seems to change.
Hey, I do basically the exact opposite of you.
Oh, what a surprise!
I know. So, when I'm writing my fantasy stuff, usually I start with a world, and I start that by drawing a map. And just going through, passing out landmarks, designing characters, designing, previous history, probably enough notes to fill in my own Silmarillion if I ever wanted to. And then I drop in my characters like some sort of weird role-playing game, and I just have them act out in their own best interests based on their personalities. And I kind of see where the story goes from there. There's a few beats that I like to hit, and a few, motives that are primary and are driving characters forward. And then I just go from there. And then oftentimes my characters will surprise me.
Now, when you said you map it out, are you talking more like the mind map style to cover all of that, and not an actual geographical map?
No, I mean a literal geographical map, and then I throw dotted lines everywhere and figure out where my characters are going, why.
Is this all manually sketched, or do you have a software?
Nope, all on paper.
Nice.
I might have a map.
Hopefully with pencil and not pen.
Find. Yes, in pencil. I bet I can go grab a map in the other room that I probably have.
Well,
but while I do that, continue talking.
Yeah, while you do that, hey, Calvin appears.
For better or worse?
That's the general consensus for the week, I think.
But I do believe I've caught the conversation in the middle of outlines and things of that nature.
Yep, talkie point number 2. And you're coming in a little quiet.
How about now?
Much better.
Cool. Yeah, outlines, I wish I knew what that was. Maybe perhaps it might help my life out a little bit. I believe the reckless abandon method has worked out semi-well for me. I think I heard Will talking, actually both of you talking about having scenes play out in your head and try to write it out that way as a rough draft. I feel like I work in a similar way, but at some point it kind of dawns on me there's a few things I may want to try to flesh out, and I'll try to jot down a few notes here and there, but that's really the extent of my outlining. Like I said, reckless abandon. It's worked out okay so far.
I'm actually curious, Calvin, is there kind of any outlining method you use for music?
The Evernote method.
Fair enough.
I think that kind of goes hand in hand with the reckless abandon method, especially given the inopportune times that ideas like to come along.
And let it be noted, it was the 25-minute mark in the show for our weekly Evernote commentary. We have filled our quota.
Unless they start advertising, and then our quota will skyrocket.
No, of course.
Oh, I got that map, by the way.
Just real quick, at some point, like once we really start getting things ramped up, we should do like the Verge and like start a bingo game for our viewers.
I already know what 3 of mine would be. Mispronouncing something, saying "God damn it, reality man."
I was going to say that should be the free square.
Or just me swearing in general. That is not allowed to be part of the drinking game. That would be dangerous.
But Justin, continue.
All right.
I have a map.
Hey, it's a map. Cool.
Yes. So it's hand sketched. Not everything's named, and a lot of this particular one that I.
And the sound cut out. So Justin is going to be the odd man out of tonight's episode.
He's experiencing some of my issues this week.
Someone has to. But for our audio listeners, oh, no, he's back. And the map has disappeared.
Check. What was the last thing I said?
You were starting to explain the hand-drawn map, and then you froze and disappeared.
I was just saying that this current map isn't climate accurate, and that it would change. And I haven't even labeled everything on this map. This is sort of a rough draft sketch. My larger map would be a lot bigger than that, and I would actually have dotted lines and paths of where people would go and a scale, and so that I can kind of keep track of, how many days would it take for somebody to go on horseback from point A to point B? That tends to be a challenge, sense of scale. When you come up with a fantasy world, it just so happens that everyone on my fantasy world happens to be on a small island, and then there's millions of miles of oceans around. Well, that works somewhat, but
and no one knows how to sail.
Right. So that doesn't really work for me. I kind of like to see bigger picture type of stuff. And sure, your story might be only relevant to a certain region of your continent, and that's fine. There's a lot of stuff in the Lord of the Rings trilogy that isn't addressed, and various Elder Scrolls video games are only taking place in one region at a time. But that's not to say that the other regions don't exist. I think that's one of the weaknesses of sort of the Game of Thrones world, is that everything is kind of like in this nice little continent, and then no one really knows what's going on elsewhere. And to me, I haven't read the books yet, so maybe the books portray this a little bit better than the show does, but a sense of scale of the land. The land mass seems very small for a fantasy epic. I'm sure it jumps around in the time scale a little bit more in the books, but that's something that kind of turned me off a little bit, and something that I try to avoid. Is I like to be grander and make references to places that are outside of my world that may not be relevant to the story.
Yeah, I think that's one complication for Game of Thrones with the series. They don't really portray the travel of time. People are going from place to place so much, because how are you going to really do that in a 45-minute episode all the time? In the books, I think it's at least acknowledged that the passage of time is a little more grand. So, yeah. And I know that for Lord of the Rings, there are people who have done the calculations to figure out just how far they walked per day and like what the mileage was, so you could figure out all that. And there's even like a game where you try to walk to Rivendell or walk to Mordor, and you can track your own progress to figure out where you would be in relation to the travelers and all that. I actually did that for a year, but that was back when I would walk like 5 miles a day. Never mind that the hobbits walk like 14 to 40 miles on any given day. So there's no way I'd keep up with them. All right. Last chance for closing commentary on this one before we move on.
Yeah, I've said all I need to say. Or at least all I can think of anyway.
I think Justin has lost his ability to speak at the moment anyway, so he is overruled. Moving on. Oh, we can't, because the next one is Justin's topic. Well, then, hopefully Justin makes a return so that we can actually have him lead this topic. Hopefully, possibly, perhaps, maybe. Come back already. Come on. I don't want to keep talking.
Fingers crossed. We believe in you, Justin. We believe in your internet, Justin.
Believe in the Justin who believes in you.
To our viewers and listeners, even in the future, wish him good internet so that he can come back and we can move on. Just make sure that all that wishing is retroactive to now. And for future episodes, I guess, just to be safe.
And also bring some of that my way.
Hmm.
And my poor internet. Though it be lightning fast, it is lightning suck at times.
All right, he may have properly froze, so I'm just going to roll with this and do his point anyway. If he comes back, he can properly lead it, but if not, we're just going to see what we can do with it. So Justin's topic for this week is, how do you fully take advantage of a good week, in quotation marks? His notations were, whether you have a lot less on your plate, you are really inspired for some reason, or you are in the zone. How do you take advantage of that momentum, and how do you keep the train running for as long as possible? At what point do you burn out, and how do you prevent it?
Well, burnout prevention is something that I've yet to figure out. If there were a surefire, if there were a surefire cure for that, I would be all over it.
I think the surefire method is unavailable to people like us because one of the surefire methods is regular sleep. So we're just screwed.
Yeah.
Also helpful to not catch a cold. Oops, too late for me.
That was me 2 weeks ago and Justin last week.
Or food poisoning.
Yeah, you don't want food poisoning either.
That's never fun.
I'm just glad I'm here right now.
That is the opposite of a good week.
Mm. Well, I know... Go ahead.
I'm pretty sure it's safe to say that like good weeks are hard to come by for all of us. But like good weeks, but I think one thing I'm learning, like even for like not so good weeks, organization. Organization is yeah, that's something more recent in my vocabulary. Like that's something I've been trying to like come to terms with recently, given the surprising amount of stuff I have to do in not even a given week, a given night. Ooh.
Sorry, not sorry.
I'm not sorry either. It's really keeping me afloat. But just realizing that like my ability to multitask. You know what? I'm just gonna be real. My ability to multitask does not exist. I just have I just have to like set aside specific blocks of time to do all the things in a given night. And one of the things I'm getting ready to purchase is a nice giant whiteboard for my wall back here, so I can like really start to like visualize what everything I'm doing and try to schedule it accordingly. And with that, that would definitely help with momentum, especially on when those fabled good weeks. That would that would give me the ability to just kind of roll with everything and not allow the panic to set in. Yes, that is the biggest thing that will kill a good week.
Hmm.
Between panic and burnout.
Or panicked burnout.
That too, though. Oh, that one's even better.
Mm.
Yeah, burnout is something that I have difficulty dealing with as well because I rally quite often. This week especially, you know,
Only a couple times a day. Every
right.
day.
So I wrote this topic last week when I had a really good week, and I was like kicking it, and I was getting inspired, and I was doing creative stuff. And then basically, as soon as I wrote down this topic question, then my work week started, and it hasn't really been bad. I've been extremely busy, but because I don't feel like crap, I really took advantage of it and worked a bunch of overtime so that when I do get burnt out and do feel like crap, I won't have as much work to do. Because being forced into labor when you really are not in the mood to do it is not great. So trying to take advantage of the time that I have where I don't feel like ass and actually just busting ass, pardon the pun, is really helpful for me.
I know for myself, I don't really have good weeks so much as good days. And sometimes it can be 2, 3, 4 days in a row, but I don't think I've had 7 consecutive days of like consistent productivity or inspiration or anything like that. There's always some event or complication that throws a wrench into it at some point. But I know I do try my best to take advantage of the energy when I actually have it, mainly by trying to. I know Justin has played around with some sort of term for this. It's not just focusing on one pure thing. It's not multitasking, but it's having like one active task and then one passive task that you're doing at the same time. Maybe even a third thing just in the background that you have to poke at occasionally. And I think he froze again, unless he's just giving me a very grumpy stare. So
And he probably would be giving you a very grumpy stare even if he wasn't frozen.
fair point, but presumably at this point he would have at least said something. Which is unfortunate because I want to know if he actually has a term for that, but
Prioritizing?
yeah, let's go with that for now. When I'm actually in the groove, I do try to prioritize and focus on 2 or 3 things. That's usually by putting headphones in and blasting absurdly loud music so I can tune out the outside world. And it tends to quiet down a lot of the chatter inside my head, which can be distracting at times.
Mm.
Very useful at work when there are deadlines.
I'm kind of with you on this one, CJ, as much as I get productive days as opposed to productive weeks when it comes to creativity. Some days I can just sit down and write for hours straight, nonstop, to the point where it feels like, I don't know how to describe it. It's like the pen starts moving faster than my thoughts can keep up.
Just kind of like going on autopilot a little bit.
Something like that. Like I'll notice it's like I can't think fast enough to write as fast as I want to write. Or something like that.
I've had that.
It's a very frustrating feeling.
That happens during Nano sometimes.
Yeah, Nano is definitely good for that. Or you can't write as fast as you want to write because your thoughts are faster.
Yeah, that too.
Which is productive but annoying. But basically, if I'm feeling productive, I try to just zone in and produce, really. Go until I have to stop.
Or
As for avoiding burnout, I have no idea.
So I see a comment on the channel that, yes, it's very punny, but it still makes me groan. If somebody is puzzled when somebody leaves a room and they wave dismissively to them, would that make the first person bi-curious?
I don't approve.
Thank you, Winters, for that one. Oh my, just in time to get through it. I hope you're balancing that on something and you're not just going to hold it up like that for the next hour and a half.
Nope, I'm literally just going to hold it up here.
We'll make sure to go extra long then tonight.
Oh, great. I'll be sure to cut out whenever I feel like it. So apparently the 2.4 gigahertz line on my wireless is complete garbage because all of my devices that use that have constant cutouts, and the 5 gigahertz is fine. So now I'm on a couch, and this is not a great angle, and I look pretty gross with this fisheye front camera lens. So yes, this is the front camera lens of a phone. I don't look this hideous in real life, but you were talking about my focus system.
Yes.
Okay, so, and that's when I cut out. So you might have already explained it. But
no, I was hoping you would explain it, but then all we got was a frozen, grumpy face from you.
Right. So what I like to do is I have 3 tasks, a primary, a secondary, and a tertiary. The tertiary thing, if I get to it, great. If I don't get to it, doesn't matter. If I get burnt out on the other 2 tasks, I can switch to the third one temporarily. But, for example, basically this whole year, I'm only focusing on 2 things, 2 projects, and I can switch back and forth between those 2. And then I have a third project I can get to whenever I want. And I find that really works well for me. I can switch tasks, and by having a focus but not, laser focus, if I don't really feel like doing task A, I can work on task B. Obviously, this doesn't work very well at work, but I make do with something similar. Okay, this is marginally better. So yeah, for example, this year I'm working on learning Mandarin and working out. And I've got my gym system in the other room. I've got my Mandarin stuff. And when I'm not working 12-hour days, then I do these 2 things. And I do it as soon as I get home. So I don't even turn on the computer. I don't play any video games. I don't do anything until I do that one of the 2 primary tasks. And then when I'm done, then I can fuss around or work on my tertiary task if I feel like it. And yeah, I'm getting stuff done, which is a rare event for me.
And then we like to throw things into your schedule like podcasts and meetings and to-dos. Yes,
I drove from work, got here instantly, had internet troubles, and then when the podcast is over, I'll be going back to work. but
Hopefully
that
they're
means I might
safe
be
at
able to
some
take
point.
Friday off. We'll see.
And Friday, I think, is the only day this week where it's not snowing.
Yay! Yeah, the snow has been a real bear. It's been taking me an hour to get home every day because I've been getting home during the middle of the snowstorm. And people drive on 95 with reckless abandon, as you know.
Regardless of
And
weather.
yeah, that's true. It's not like it changed. So yeah, it's been an interesting week. I did get a whole bunch of stuff done over the weekend. I did finish my website. We'll be talking about that later. So yeah, when I'm not at work, I'm actually getting other stuff done instead of playing video games. Not playing video games on the weekday and forcing myself not to do that has been a real help too.
All right. Time for closing comments on this one, I think. Speak now or stay quiet. Silent stare as it is. Moving on. Don't even get a head nod anymore. All right, time for the highlights reel. We got all sorts of fun stuff for you tonight. So for the viewers, let's shift over to screen share. Looks like you're sitting on bubble wrap. No, that's not the first thing. That was for one of the talkie points. Nope. There we go. First one is over at Polygon.com, where they have noted that the Blade Runner sequel, for one, is a thing, and it looks like Harrison Ford is going to make a return for it. And I'm kind of curious for the viewers and listeners and the crew, is this encouraging, or are we just so jaded with sequels and whatnot that chances are it's not going to be that important or significant anyway? I can't really speak much towards this one myself because I haven't seen the damn movie.
You didn't see the original Blade Runner yet?
No, and I'm pretty sure that I would actually appreciate it because it looks right up my alley. I've just never gotten around to it.
It's dated, for sure, but story-wise, it actually kind of holds up. I haven't seen it in a little while. I wouldn't mind visiting it again. And based on other sequels to popular franchises and how well they've gone, I don't have a whole lot of faith in this one. Even if you revive characters, like let's take a look at the last Indiana Jones movie, and that even had Harrison Ford in it. So, and then there's all the various sequels that have been coming out that really movies that did not need sequels, and I think Blade Runner falls into that category of movies that don't need a sequel, that stand on their own. So I'm not even cautiously optimistic on this one. I'm just not interested at all. I would have been more interested in a modern remake that did not star Harrison Ford. But even that would have been a horrible mess.
Yeah, the last few remakes weren't all that great either. When they remade, I'm blanking on what it was called.
Characters, plot, something to go off of.
Even the new Terminator movie that's coming out looks like hot garbage.
Yeah, it does. It was the one with, was it Arnold Schwarzenegger on Mars?
Total Recall.
Yeah, Total Recall. Yeah, I heard the remake was not exactly up to snuff.
I saw it, and I enjoyed it, taking into account that it's an update, and they're doing a couple homages to the original, but for the most part, they did their own spin on it.
I haven't seen it, so I can't offer any direct judgment. I can only go by what I've heard on it.
But then again, they were trying to tie together what I felt like were a lot of subplots without a real clear main plot to help hold it together. But I've only seen it the once, and I was kind of drinking at the time with a friend, so keep that in mind in regards to my perspective on it.
I'm personally getting tired of seeing all of these sequels and sequels of sequels coming out this year, personally. Like, I see all the new movies coming out, and they're all part 3s and part 4s, and they're all sequels, and there's very few original movies coming out, and many that it's like, why is this even getting a sequel? Do we need a Frozen 2 and a Toy Story 4?
Yeah, because it's familiar IPs and people will go see it. See, the movie doesn't have to be good to be produced. The movie has to make money. Look at all the Adam Sandler movies that have come out. Those have been making a ton of money, and they are horrendously bad. Objectively horrendously bad.
They're
with no redeeming qualities.
The thing is, you can have an original bad movie. It doesn't have to be a sequel bad movie. Like you just said. All those Adam Sandler movies, they're not sequels.
But intellectual property that's already known and has a name is not as risky as new IPs. A new IP, I mean, look at...
it's still just a shame, though, because we're losing out...
Look at Edge of Tomorrow. Edge of Tomorrow is a perfect example of this. It's a new IP. It was a really good movie. No one gave a fuck, to the point where they didn't even bother marketing it because it didn't test well, and then they changed the fucking title of the movie as soon as it got released.
What did
it was
they
like, now it's called Live, Die, Repeat, because some producer said, well, people like video games and they can understand if you die and come back to life, so we're going to dumb it down for all the idiots.
Wait,
and now I'm sure it's making
that?
Yes, it is now called Live, Die, Repeat with 3 periods.
Oh, for fuck's sake!
Yes,
I like the title originally, and I really did want to see it. I just didn't get the time to in theater.
It is a really good movie. It is an action comedy. It's pretty brilliant. And, yeah, it didn't get its due because it's a new IP and no one's going to go see it.
The thing is, I still stand by my statement. Just because it'll make money doesn't mean we need it.
That's not what the shareholders say.
I don't care about what the shareholders say. The shareholders aren't watching these damn movies anyway.
Yes, but if a company doesn't make a certain profit level, then the shareholders can actually sue the company. The company is legally required to make profit for shareholders.
Okay, I'll keep my opinions to myself.
No, your opinions are valid. They're just also wrong.
That opinions can't be wrong.
If your opinion is based primarily on facts and the facts are wrong or incorrect, then they can be misaligned. But if it's just opinions, that's fine. You can't really...
I'm offering my opinion personally.
Yeah.
Yes, and I agree that good movies should be made. Unfortunately, that's not... The people who go and spend money on the movies are not the people who want new original intellectual property. And it's a shame. What we should do is rally people to go watch movies that are more risky and have original IPs associated with them.
And another aspect to all of this in regards to sequels and whatnot in the movies that I'm not overly familiar with but should be at least commented on is stuff like the Spider-Man IP and mainly superhero movies I'm thinking of. They are somewhat obligated to put some form of content out within a certain amount of time or the IP reverts back to another holder. So sometimes I feel like they just pound something out for the sake of holding on to the rights.
I've heard some of those have been pretty good at least, though.
Yeah, thankfully some of them are good, but I still feel like it's more or less of a crapshoot. I think
the first Fantastic Four, not the Jessica Alba Fantastic Four, but the first one was pushed out to keep an IP. And it is, from what I understand, having not seen it, it's not good.
For some reason, Daredevil keeps coming to mind as an example that people use for this a lot. I think they needed to do something to hold on to the rights of it, but I may very easily be mistaken. I personally enjoyed that movie more than probably most people. I know a lot of people hated on that one. Probably because they knew more about the Daredevil verse than I ever could. But
yeah, I wasn't familiar with the source material, and I didn't think it was as bad as everyone claimed it was. But maybe it was a completely different. Oh God! And all the Punisher reboots, one after the other, having no association with each other. It's just exhausting.
I remember I saw the first Punisher movie, and I thought it was nicely done for an action movie. I just don't know its relevancy to the actual Punisher verse.
And I'm so nervous about the what's coming out. Why am I blanking? Yeah, move on. I'll think of it later.
All right. Let's see. Next up on the highlights is DC Comics Catwoman is officially bisexual. And it's semi non-news because a lot of fans have just figured, yeah, we already know this since that got a reboot in its own series, but this is nice in that a lot of the characters who get like some sort of recognition for whatever, either their sexual orientation or their race or religion or this or that, it's rarely actually confirmed or acknowledged by the content creators. This one, like the next day, the writer for that series came out and said, yes, it is canon. Deal with it, basically. That is nice, in that the content creators are actually able to go and say, like, no, you don't have to keep wondering. This is what it is. And the link I'm talking about specifically is over at the Mary Sue, but reading like the description for the current plotline for Catwoman, I'm actually intrigued by this series. I wouldn't mind checking it out because it sounds interesting. The whole concept of Catwoman basically putting up her costume and taking over one of the crime syndicates, and then someone else taking up the Catwoman mantle. That is interesting, and I feel like it's different within the DC-verse, but I haven't read the DC-verse in a while now, so for all I know, it could have been done to death. I'm sure people who are fans of this series and the DC-verse will comment on our channel accordingly and correct me as necessary. Next up, over at geekculture.co, I guess they wanted to skip the M, is a new game that has recently been greenlighted over on Steam. And the only reason I wanted to bring this one up is because it focuses on the weaponsmiths and the blacksmiths in RPGs, in that you get to create the weapons and the armor for various heroes. So it puts an entirely different perspective on the RPG genre. And it just so happens that you are a potato. I'm not quite sure what the reasoning behind that part is, other than it's just amusing, but I would not mind playing this. I'm intrigued by this one. It looks like a lot of fun. You get to learn how to make weapons, upgrade them, put spells on them, sell them out to various heroes, level up stuff like your armory and all that. I think that would be fun, and it's, again, a different take on the RPG genre. It's nice to see the different sides of regular genres and stuff.
Isn't there a game on Steam?
There are many games on Steam.
Yes. I want to say it's something like Item Shop Resetter, RECC, something, where you are also a general item shop and you're giving items to adventurers, and then the adventurers go out and use those items and then bring you back loot. A Resetter's Tale, something like that. I don't know what Resetter means. I think it's
not ringing a bell, but that would be
a Japanese thing.
I would play that.
Yeah, maybe I'll try to remember what that is and dig that up on the next podcast or something.
This one gets bonus points for potatoes and interrobangs.
As long as the gameplay is interesting, there's an Android app, I'm sure it was on iOS first, where it's like a match 3 type of thing where if you get 3 sticks in a row, you can build the handle to a weapon. And then if you put 3 rocks in a row, it turns into some other material. And then there's molds. And so the gameplay is very like puzzly. Hopefully it's a little bit more involved than that. It's like the beer app where you have a whole bunch of people making beer and all the detailed actual steps that it would take to make beer.
It looks a little more detailed than that, but I haven't had the time to look on Greenlight for it to see just how in-depth they're going to go with it. But I'm going to keep an eye on this one because this one looks like it would be fun. And just imagine if it had multiplayer capabilities. And you could check out other people's forges and stuff like that. So yeah, that's going to be fun when it comes out. And the next one in the highlights is Stephen King submitted a short story to The New Yorker recently. And I have not had a chance to read it yet, and I don't remember putting this in the show notes.
That's because I put in the show notes.
But
I, too, have not read it yet because, again, I discovered it during work and then have been doing nothing but work since then. But I figured I'd bring it out so that the listeners can get a chance to get their homework done and read it. It's very short, even by short story standards. And I wouldn't mind if anyone that was interested that was in our podcast would read it as well. And then maybe we could talk about it next week.
yeah, I wouldn't mind taking a look at it.
Scrolling down to see how long it is.
And to give our viewers an idea.
Mm-hmm.
The audio listeners are just going to have to go to The New Yorker and find out for themselves, or use the convenient link in the show notes. Yeah, as far as a short story is concerned, that's not bad.
Manageable
Yes.
for assigned homework. And this will theoretically tie in really well with our talking point earlier about culturally relevant storytelling.
Cool. Well, now I have to read it.
I mean, I implied that earlier.
All right, next up is... Come on. This one has actually been in the queue for a while. I just didn't realize we hadn't gone to it yet, but BuzzFeed has put together a list of 24 books you should read based off of your favorite TV shows. Some of these I see the connection to, some of these I'm not familiar enough with to know the connection to. But it's interesting how, depending on if you read a lot or if you see a lot of series, you can kind of migrate from media to media. Mad Men would be equated to Richard Yates' Revolutionary Road. I haven't seen any of Mad Men, but I've heard nothing but good things about it. If you're a fan of Doctor Who, they recommend Douglas Adams' The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I have no problem recommending Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy to anyone, but I feel like Douglas Adams is a little bit sillier than current Doctor Who. I mean, if you went to the old school Doctor Who, it's sometimes that level of silly, but I don't know, I feel like the current Doctor Who's a little more gritty. If you've watched the American Office, they recommend Then We Came to the End by Joshua Ferris. I have seen a fair portion of The Office, but only like the first 4 seasons, and even that was hit or miss. And the crew is welcome to join in to my commentary at any point, so it's not just my monologue, just so they know. Seinfeld, I enjoyed that series. when it was on. I have no idea what Portnoy's Complaint by Philip Roth is. I have never actually heard of that. The book whose protagonist's issues with sex and his mother make Jerry and George look pretty much normal by comparison. Well then, that probably would be an entertaining read. If you're a fan of Gossip Girl, there's The A-List by Zoe Dean. I keep wanting to get into The Walking Dead because that looks like a fun series as well. Or at least an interesting series. I don't think there is much fun to be had there. They equate it to World War Z by Max Brooks. I can kind of see the connection there with the way World War Z is compiled. So, yeah, that one's interesting. Orange is the New Black is equated to Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale. In Game of Thrones, they equate to Patrick Rothfuss's The Name of the Wind.
They do know that a Game of Thrones story actually exists in print form, right?
Maybe.
If you're a fan of the Game of Thrones show, you may consider reading the Game of Thrones books. Maybe.
But then you'll get spoilers. Breaking Bad, they equate to Macbeth. I haven't seen any of Breaking Bad, but it's an interesting comparison to make.
I feel like a lot of these are thematic connections more than specific characters or stories.
That would explain some of the ones that confuse me in regards to connections. For Sex and the City, they have Jennifer Weiner's Good in Bed. They equate Supernatural to Neil Gaiman's American Gods, which makes me actually want to watch Supernatural at some point because American Gods is a fantastic novel. And then again, Neil Gaiman's a fantastic author. I presume this is more of a thematic one as well because I don't understand the connection between Lost and Lord of the Flies. I feel like Lost has a much more convoluted plot than Lord of the Flies.
They both have a smoke monster, so there's that.
Maybe that's the main connection. It's the same monster. Just two different islands.
But one is the manifestation of a psychological breakdown, and one's a literal smoke monster.
Minor detail. We also got Pretty Little Liars and The Lying Game by Sarah Shepard. The Sopranos equates to American Pastoral by Philip Roth. Vampire Diaries to Blue Bloods by Melissa de la Cruz. Oops, skipped one. Sherlock, the current series, to Robert Galbraith's The Cuckoo's Calling. I kind of wish they had equated it to Arthur Conan Doyle just for fun, but no such luck.
Interesting is actually it states that that book is by J.K. Rowling.
Oh, that's the one where she went under a different name.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that until I actually looked at the note saying such. We also have House of Cards equates to Richard III.
Political intrigue and backstabbing.
You have a vibrator going off.
Yeah.
Oh,
You have the show Girls, which equates to Bad Feminist Essays by Roxane Gay. Okay. The Big Bang Theory equates to The Rosie Project by Graham Simpson. However that's pronounced. Downton Abbey equates to Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. Yeah, sure. I can kind of see that. Once Upon a Time equates to Enchanted by Alethea Contis. This one makes me want to read the frickin' book that I've had since Book Expo last year, because it's in my pile, And I've actually met the author, and she is most entertaining. And yeah, I can see the book from here. I really should get on that, because it looked interesting. And it's part of a series. American Horror Story Freak Show equates to Catherine Dunn's Geek Love. Considering the original connotations of geek, that makes sense. Revenge equates to the Count of Monte Cristo. Fair enough. Twin Peaks to Tom Robbins' Still Life with Woodpecker. Oh, that's the last one. And for each one, they do give a little one-paragraph summary between the two to try and tie them together, as they do. It's interesting. So by all means, go check it out. Links in the show notes. And because they keep doing it every freaking week, Story Bundle has a new bundle. This one's Special Ops. And I actually read the summaries for all of these books. I originally thought, oh, Special Ops, so we're going to be talking like Army, Navy, Air Force, that type of stuff. For that, it would be Dead Ice by David Wood and Stephen Seville, and Snafu Heroes, which edited by Jeff Brown and Amanda Spedding. Then we get into some of the others where it's not that. It's a little more fantastical and whatnot, with Crucible by Stephen Seville and Steve Lockley, Outcast Ops: The Poseidon Initiative by Rick Chesler, Prime by Jeremy Robinson and Sean Ellis. You go full fantasy with Infernal Games and Judgment Day. Infernal Games by Joseph Nassis, Judgment Day by Joseph... Oh, both by the same... That makes sense, because they are really... I don't think they're historical fiction, even though they have a lot of... oh, damn it. Who are the main enemies in the Assassin's Creed? The Templars. There's a lot of Templar intrigues in these two. And the last one I'm saving for the last because Mortal Threat by A.J. Tata, that one just looks all over the place. It looks like it has about 7 different plots going on in it. And I'm not sure if that's good or confusing. I'm not sure if I'd be able to handle it. But it is an interesting bundle for those that prefer that style of stories. That one's over at Story Bundle. And the minimum is $12 to get all 8. If you do under, you just get 4. So I think that's like $1.50 a book, which not terrible. And Humble Bundle just updated theirs as well. They're doing another Transformers graphic novels bundle. This one covers the main series of Transformers, More Than Meets the Eye, Robots in Disguise, and Dark Cybertron. And also the few issue part of Days of Deception. I never really got into Transformers, so I can't speak to the storylines, but I think some of these are like the main storylines for the Transformers verse from what I read in the summaries. So if you're a fan of the series and you want ebook versions, it's pretty cost effective. And with that, that's all the highlights for this week. So take me off a screen share. That means it's time for productivity and inspiration.
I believe it's productivity and inspiration station.
Sorry.
Whoever put station in there, it was not me.
Oh, I thought it was you and you were cranky because I didn't say it.
No, somebody was having a giggle. It was not me.
Actually, considering it rhymes with inspiration, no, it was probably me, and I've just forgotten. But yes, I have been productive in that I've been pushing my trilogy out in scene-sized chunks because that's just how they're forming in my head lately. And I found that trying to get an entire scene out is more effective than trying to outline a scene, go to the next one, and outline the next one. Just going chunk by chunk seems to be more effective in that manner lately. And achievement unlocked. I've actually interacted with humanity last weekend, and it was fun. Not only did I get to make a duct tape rose with Will and Ed, I actually got to hang out with someone new, and it was fun. Although coffee shops need to really update their website with their accurate hours, so if they say 7:30 on a Saturday and they actually mean 6, it would help if they change that.
Especially the one you're talking about in particular, because that's been wrong on the website for over a year now.
Yeah, I don't really appreciate showing up at 5:55 and finding out they close in 5 minutes and not an hour and a half. Because I wanted a coffee by then, but no such luck. Hey, how did other people fare this week? Who's up next? Will is up next.
I'm up next. I completed and put up that short little adult erotica piece that I had been working on for a little while. I had fun writing it, and it was pretty well received, so that's a victory all around. I also, convenient for this chapter, this episode, I outlined the next chapter of Roommate and actually, excuse me, productively outlined a chapter for once instead of just flying by the seat of my pants. All part of my attempt to figure out where I'm going with it. And I productively got a cold.
I'm not sure that one counts.
I'm up and here despite the cold.
That's more like it.
Hooray.
And how about Justin?
Okay, I'm on my phone, so I'm going to try to remember what they are. One, I finished my website enough where I can start posting on it, and you'll see I've put in a couple small posts so far. Expect much more to come when I'm not working 12-hour days, although I was kind of inspired to do a little bit of writing on the website very recently. But the CSS is done. I got to update the About page and add a couple links and stuff, but it's definitely to the point where I no longer, during the end of the show, have to say, I can't, no, nothing. So that's good. Last week, there was a prompt to, the reason why that story prompt came up, not story, a talkie point prompt, is I had a really productive week. I don't know if I specifically said what went on that week in the show notes, but it was more inspirational than productive, so I've got a lot of stuff going on, and I feel really good about it. I'm not in a weird, burnt out phase, which is good. And I believe the third one was I started a fitness challenge on Reddit, 3-month challenge. Going to try to get a bigger kickstart and really push myself through. I've already started working out, and I've lost a little bit of weight, but it's time to not just exercise, but to exercise and diet. Oh, no, I may have to eat less than 45,000 calories a day. Most of my eating issues are cognitive dissonance and slipping into a fugue state where I don't know what I'm actually doing. So I think with some self-awareness, I can take care of that and stop eating like an idiot and be fine.
You actually did those in reverse order of how you listed them in the show notes, but
that is frightening.
And I'm going to slip in 2 comments that I've seen on the video. I'm not sure if it's good or bad that Ed is not here, but Winter comments, and it would be great if there was a live-action adaptation of Full Metal Alchemist where Harrison Ford plays Mustang. Not that we need that. And another comment from him, Justin is learning Mandarin. Orange, you proud of yourself. Congrats, I do approve.
I don't approve of the pun. I am going to name my daughter Clementine, if that helps. And I was going to join the Navy. And I think I'm out of puns relating to citrus fruit.
Oh, in that case, it's Calvin's turn.
All right. Let's see. I fought against some musical frustrations last week. I had started putting together a track for Infinity's Light that involved guitar. The only issue was I hadn't been actively playing my guitar in several months, and my ability to play kind of reflected that. So it took most of the week to try to get some of the muscle memory back, but I was able to, and I was able to get a rough draft of an idea off to Richie, and it looks like it's gonna work out okay. So I'm happy about that.
Hooray!
And the only other thing I wrote was I fought against food poisoning. Well, I shouldn't really say fought, more I should say fighting, which is always fun.
Everyone's sick.
I think that's another thing that's going to have to go on all your contracts. No being poisoned.
Tell that to the food I ate earlier today.
No eating poisoned food.
Not even for science.
Especially not for science. Speaking of music, I wanted to bring up one more piece of inspiration that I would have added to the show notes. During my In the Zone stuff at work, I've been playing my my workout playlist of a whopping 6 songs. It's a developing playlist. I'm working on it. And one song in particular, when I had my headphones shoved as deep into my ear holes as humanly possible, the Imagine Dragons song Battle Cry, which was featured extensively in the latest Transformers movie. Listening to that, and having also seen Imagine Dragons live, they have a really big ass drum, like a 7-foot diameter drum that they wail on. And I got inspired to try to find music that involves a giant drum. And I've also been inspired to actually fuss around with drums. And I have a drum, actually I think it's right here, from Taiwan. And unfortunately it only makes like 2 notes, depending on where I hit it. And I think I know somebody who has a drum kit that I might be able to obtain. But I also live in an apartment, so I may not be able to follow that dream until I move into a house. Because playing the drums in an apartment is really obnoxious.
And the sound carries impressively far, depending on insulation.
Yes. And if I plan on getting a 7-foot drum, that sound will probably carry pretty far.
Yeah. You could always trade it for your exercise equipment, considering the space required.
Yeah, but like the noise doesn't travel quite as much on the exercise equipment. And I'd like to accomplish that goal first, especially considering I'm all in on a contest right now. I should at least finish that before I move on. Maybe 2015, I'll be learning how to play the piano and the drum. Those would be my 2 goals. I mean, 2016. Oh, God, sorry, 2015.
1 year at a time. I mean, I know you start your years differently from everyone else.
Yes, I start them December 1st. Calvin, did you have a third thing? Did I totally interrupt you? I can't remember.
No, I only had 2.
Oh, okay. Well, good, I'm not a horrible person then. Not because of that, at least.
Yeah, only I'm allowed to interrupt people when they're doing their spiels. Mainly because I'm the boss man and I can do that. Alright, next up, events. We are still logisticizing various ones, but the entire list of ones we're working towards are on the show notes and over at the website. Book Expo in May is still the next one up for us as attendees. And Kineticon is still the next main one where we will be attending as vendors and hopefully press. Pretty please.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. And a couple others still in the works. Plus something else that I should toss on there. Let's see, March, next month. Because that's when I can actually figure it out. But yes, go check that out if you want to know where we'll be, if you want to see us in person. And with that, because it's also been an hour and a half, it's time to start wrapping things up. If we entertained you in any way, shape, or form, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, where you can watch, comment, and thumbs up all of our various videos. We are now posting something almost every day. I think Sunday is the only day we take a break. So check back regularly to see what we're posting.
And we're ramping up on content. We haven't even reached peak content output yet.
No,
it's getting ridiculous.
We're trying to figure out how to make this more reliable phase, because recording shenanigans for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Once we have that ironed out, all bets are off. If you want to talk to us via social media, find us on Twitter at FCWordNinja. Bonus points if you use the hashtag WordNinjas. Follow us over on Tumblr, fcwordninja.tumblr.com, or go like our Facebook page, facebook.com/fullcoveragewriters. Converse with us, talk with us, continue the various talkie points and highlights and everything that we do. We like to discuss and have a dialogue with our viewers and listeners out there. If you want to help fund any of our various endeavors that we do or help us get to conventions, go check out our Etsy store, which is etsy.com/shop/fullcoveragewriters, where we have all sorts of shiny baubles for you. And all purchases help to pay for stuff like audiobook recording costs, convention attendance, press coordination, tech and recording upgrades, global domination, the usual. And a friendly reminder that the Word Ninjas live show is compiled by Full Coverage Writers, which is the overall organization that covers everything that we do. We are a repository of resources for writers, providing all sorts of engaging content for you. You can contact us via email over at wordninja@fcwriters.com. And with that, time to sign out individually. If you want to talk to me personally, you're brave. You can find me on my personal Tumblr, fancypantswolf.tumblr.com. You can check out my occasional progress updates on my trilogy, slashandburntrilogy.tumblr.com. Or you can see me as Makarov on the Fairy Tale Podcast Monday nights at 10 p.m. Eastern Time over on their YouTube channel. Will, where can people find you?
You can usually find me on my personal Tumblr page at darkhome.tumblr.com, DARKHOM for those listening. If you're looking for information on my writing shenanigans specifically for My Roommate's a Stripper, that's at myroommatesastripper.tumblr.com. Any other writing shenanigans will probably end up on my personal blog.
And how about Justin?
Everything in the foreseeable future is going to be at mechanicaljustin.com. I've played around with getting a Twitter, but everything that I've come up with is stupid, and Mechanical Justin doesn't fit into Twitter, so Twitter can go fuck off, and I'm going to do my own thing on my own website. So check out short little blurbs and lengthier pieces on my website at mechanicaljustin.com.
And rounding us out, Calvin.
You can find me on Tumblr at instacal.tumblr.com. Twitter and Instagram is at ccwii, and SoundCloud is soundcloud.com/soundsbycalvin.
All right, everyone, that is a show. Thank you for joining us for episode 81. Come back next Wednesday night for episode 82. But in the meantime, by all means, come back and check out our channel for various game break updates, Muse food posts, and whatever else we decide to put together.
And hopefully next week I'll have a wired connection to my podcast location.
Hopefully.
Because my laptop does not support 5 gigahertz, unfortunately.
Oof.
And hopefully it's not going to be snowing next week.
Oh, please,
for like
no.
3 days straight.
Stop. No.
All right, everyone. Have a good night.